Hey everybody, Blake T. Wild here, and welcome back to The Ultimate Era, where I have been covering Ultimate Marvel Comics week after week, and we are just plowing through these books. We're getting to some mid to late stage Ultimate Universe, and this is where I think it kind of gets really good, because the universe is time to evolve and grow, and things are just getting out there and crazy. As always, this episode is brought to you by my Patreon and my Etsy shop. Links in the description below. My Patreon has early access to videos, all of my comics on there digitally, movie commentaries, and more, and my Etsy shop has all of my comics physically if you want to pick up a real copy, and each purchase comes with a free head sketch of any character of your choosing. Check out the links in the description below. Released in 2011, written by Mark Miller with art by Lionel Francis Yu and Steven Segovia, this is Ultimate Avengers versus New Ultimates. So for anyone who is unaware of the circumstances that has gotten us here, in the Ultimate Universe, the Avengers was a S.H.I.E.L.D. Black Ops initiative that was launched by Nick Fury sometime in the past before he became director or anything like that. And it was funded, apparently, by technology and equipment from Gregory Stark, Tony Stark's twin brother, who's 20 minutes older than him, so they have that feud going on. However, at some point, the Avengers initiative was shut down until Nick Fury returned after Ultimatum and restarted it under Carol Danvers' new S.H.I.E.L.D. organization. The New Ultimates, however, is a new S.H.I.E.L.D. U.S. government initiative following Ultimatum, and it's pretty much going back to the basics. The Ultimates were originally a U.S.-sanctioned superhero team. They disbanded and left S.H.I.E.L.D. after the attack on the country and did their own thing until Ultimatum. Now they're back working for S.H.I.E.L.D. all full-time, pretty much. And now that the stage is set, the show can begin. The story begins at the now dislocated Triskelion, which was teleported into the Kavir Desert in Iran after an army of vampires attacked it. Check out the Blade vs. Vampire Avengers video on my channel to catch up on that. It's a crazy story. Giant Man, Scott Lang, is awoken. Is there a reason why giant men in this universe are seemingly all bald, or just at least buzz cut, crew cut hair? I guess it's a military thing, but like, would there be a reason to have no hair if you can grow 60 feet tall? Like, would that affect something? Oh yeah, meet Ultimate Scott Lang. Anyway, Scott wakes up and asks why it's so bright out, and a S.H.I.E.L.D. recovery team explain that Captain America transported them here during a vampire attack. He tries to get up out of the wreckage, but the team tells him to just relax because he's concussed and in shock. Scott tells him that he needs to call his family and let him know what happened and that he's okay, and the S.H.I.E.L.D. team tell him that he'll have to wait in line for the other 30,000 people on the Triskelion, all trying to do the same thing. Then they hose some fresh water into his mouth and explain that it'll take at least a week to extract everyone into the U.S., and that Iran has declared this an act of war and has given the US 10 days to get the hell out. Cut to Manhattan. Director Danvers and Hawkeye wait in the middle of an intersection cordoned off by S.H.I.E.L.D. as Thor teleports Steve and an incapacitated Tony Stark back, and they head into Lenox Hill Hospital. And early the next morning, Tony Stark lies in a hospital bed in a comatose state due to his brain tumor. Danvers is in disbelief that seemingly only Thor and Cap knew about the condition, and Thor explains that it was a major factor for Tony to become a superhero. Danvers assures them that the doctors are confident they can drain it, but he'll be out for another day or so. Steve asks Gregory Stark if he'd like a moment alone with his brother. Dr. Stark declines and asks why Antonio would keep something like this a secret from him. Yeah, I've never actually mentioned it or brought it up, but Ultimate Tony Stark is short for Antonio. His full name is Antonio Stark, not Anthony. And I like it. It's a fun little change that doesn't really mean much, but it's neat. The group then head out of the hospital as Scott Lang asks why Thor can't just use his hammer to teleport the whole thing back. Thor explains it's pretty easy to do if you're aiming for a desert, not when you're trying to get it back into one of the most populated places on Earth. They then head into a conference room as Danvers explains that the Triskelion is the least of their concerns right now. And Gregory explains that there was a break-in at his English strike facility and that the place was wiped out and cleaned of everything. Danvers notes that the Russians or Chinese are their current main suspects for the stolen materials. Thor asks if she means genetic experiments, and Gregory just goes ahead and reveals that they were working on a new generation of superhumans. Cap asks what the leads are, and Danvers explains that there was someone on the inside who was making money off of this, and that Fury and his pet Avengers are already assigned to the case. Cap tells her that they need to get right into this and that there's no time to sit around. So the next day, in Bulgaria, aboard a train bridge, the conductor notices something on the tracks up ahead. Thor's hammer. Mjolnir. And the obvious happens. The train totally derails and launches off the bridge, and the new Ultimates move on in. They rush down the snowbank and head towards the train and make quick work of the soldiers guarding the capsule of the Mimic. And one of the enemy's soldiers laughs and mocks them as he activates the capsule and the door flies open. And this horrific monstrosity appears. But instead of attacking, the Mimic asks where he is, and why he can't see anything, and why it hurts so much, and he cries out that he just wanted to be a superhero. And then he feels himself growing larger and larger as he absorbs Giant Man's abilities. And then he falls into the snow and writhes in pain, and calls out for whoever's there to please talk to him. And Thor walks up to the giant and assures him that there's nothing to be worried about. The Ultimates are here to keep him safe, and the Mimic laments that Thor is seeing him like this and that he is so embarrassed. He asks if Captain America's with him, and Cap walks over and calls him son and tells him that he's right here. The Mimic recounts a moment when Captain America visited his base in Afghanistan and brought them all Thanksgiving turkeys, and hung out with all of them, taking time to speak to everyone who came up and hang out with him. And he cries from dried, dead tear ducts as his lipless mouth quivers and shakes, and tells Steve that he was his inspiration. That's why he volunteered for this new super soldier program, and asks why he was disconnected so early. Scott runs over, grows, and takes his hand, and assures that he'll be okay, as the Mimic whispers that he is scared. And Cap marches to the man who activated the Mimic and hoists him by the throat, and holds a device made by Tony Stark that is 10 times more powerful than sodium pentothal, and threatens to use it. Cap demands to know where they were taking the super soldier prototypes, and the man is quick to tell Captain America everything he wants to know. They were getting transported to China. Cap asks if S.H.I.E.L.D. staff is involved, and the guy's like, of course they are. They used S.H.I.E.L.D. ships to move the materials they stole, and that they've been working with an entire division to get this completed, some Black Ops group. Cap screams to give him the name, and the man simply chuckles and asks who else could pull off something like this. Nick Fury and a group of armed S.H.I.E.L.D. guards wait in a prison cell block as Frank Castle is shuffled out. Fury cracks some jokes, and Castle tells him that whatever he's selling, Frank ain't buying, especially if it has to do with working in Fury's little assassination squad. Fury offers him some incentive, and asks how much it's killing him to be surrounded by the worst of the worst. And then he removes a large keyring from his pocket, and asks Frank what he would do with one night where all the staff simply went home. Fury tells him he can get whatever his freaky black heart desires, and Frank asks when they leave. The next day, Fury visits Blade in a cafe in New York and hands him a phone with live footage of one Deacon Frost, the man responsible for killing Blade's mother and turning him into a daywalker. Blade agrees to join the team. In a luxury estate, Hawkeye finishes decimating an Italian drug cartel that he was sent to take care of by Fury. Then he's contacted and informed to book a flight to Argentina for the next assignment. And finally, back in the present in South America, Nick Fury sits in a cafe and watches the Spanish dub of an old Iron Man cartoon that involved Jim Rhodes, aka War Machine. He flies through the air complaining that Stark International kept his likeness rights, meaning he didn't get a cent of money from the show. Blade radios that the men that they've been looking for are heading inside, and Hawkeye informs them that the superhuman arms dealer is there as well. Rhodes runs a facial ID scan as the deal begins in the cafe. The diminutive black man sits down, and his men place a large case atop the table as he explains that the superhuman child, codenamed Maximus, was still gestating when the facility was raided, but he's in perfect working order, and Fury calls him to go into action. All of the men except the seller are shot through the head in an instant, and Punisher aims his handgun at the man's head, and seconds later he's launched out of the window into the street by Tyrone Cash, the first Hulk. Now, I haven't covered it, so you may be wondering who the fuck Tyrone Cash even is. Well, he originally named Leonard Williams, he was an English scientist who worked on creating a super soldier serum at Cambridge, and is also the mentor of Bruce Banner. They eventually created a compound and tested it on Williams. Obviously, it went wrong, I suppose, and he hulked out and disappeared, eventually taking up the name Tyrone Cash and becoming a gangster and controlling operations through Africa, Asia, South America, other third world countries and wherever. And he actually was introduced in the second Ultimate Avengers volume, where they deal with Ghost Rider, and he's brought onto the team to help. He is just absolutely a ridiculous character, but there is something I really love about Tyrone Cash. It's just, he's a hulking dude with gold-plated knuckles that read Hulk. And in a way, he's kind of the ultimate version of Doc Samson, although Doc Samson does appear in Ultimate Spider-Man later. But more importantly, he's the ultimate version of one of my favorite versions of the Hulk, Joe Fixit. Anyway, Cash smashes his way out into the streets as Hawkeye and Frank move to safety, and War Machine crashes down and drives Cash down into the road. Rhodes is immediately rocketed out into the air as Cash emerges from the hole. The trio open fire on him as Cash just takes the bullets against his body, calls them wankers. War Machine tackles him and they duke it out in an intersection, and the fucking impact of Cash's punches are felt 1,000 miles away. Cash strikes War Machine to the ground and demolishes his armor, and screams that they should have minded their own goddamn business. Then Blade arrives, and vampirically hypnotizes Cash to return to his normal form. Cash realizes that he can't Hulk out again. He sighs as Fury and the Avengers surround him and reveals that he's actually working for S.H.I.E.L.D. director Carol Danvers, and he tells him that she has been selling state secrets for years. Hawkeye calls him a liar, and he laughs, noting that they know nothing about the truth, and that she's gonna have them killed. Thor returns to the apartment he lives in with Jane Foster, and reveals what he has learned about Nick Fury. That he has been selling state secrets for over 10 years, and might have even been behind the Liberators' invasion. He climbs in bed exhausted, noting that America has a history of creating its own monsters. Then he reveals that Fury and his Avengers disappeared 12 hours ago on an operation. She asks Thor how he can even stomach working with these people, let alone being in the same room as them, and Thor cuddles her and says that someone has to keep an eye on what they're up to. And a few days later at Lenox Hill Hospital, Tony Stark pops himself up out of bed, fastens his robe, gazes out of the window into NYC, and asks his sexy nurse, who is actually a model that he hired to hang around, for his martini. He then asks her to call his secretary Pepper and tell her that he needs a new Iron Man suit in 45 minutes and make sure that S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't get into any of his shit while they are temporarily using his office building. She asks if he's okay to do all that after having a brain tumor operation, and he tells her that he bought the hospital out last night and gave himself authority over the place. And he takes a sip and looks back out over the city and tells her that he feels like something really terrible is going to happen. And that evening, as sun sets over Stark International's headquarters along the banks of the East River, Director Danvers and Gregory Stark discuss the Fury situation. Gregory tells her that he's worried about Captain America because the guy has barely slept since Bulgaria, and now Danvers is sending him out on some babysitting mission with Spider-Man. She tells him that he's fine and that he actually only ever gets an hour or two of sleep every week because of the super soldier serum. And then they get a video call from Owen Wilson. Oh, no. It's Captain Britain. He's in Iran working on removing all the equipment and notes that the European Union heroes are far more palatable for the Iranians than the Americans are, but they only have 5 days left, and he's getting worried that even with the time, they might not get everything out. Then they hang up, and Nick Fury makes his presence known. Danvers opens fire on him, but Fury's personal protection shield deflects the bullets. And then War Machine emerges from his suit's hidden stealth, whatever the fuck this is trying to convey, and he opens fire, blasting a massive hole in the Stark International building. But Danvers, Stark, and the S.H.I.E.L.D. team are saved by Iron Man's force field, and yeah, for some genius reason, they just kind of decided to eventually make the MCU Iron Man suit the ultimate Iron Man suit. I suppose, like in the MCU, it makes sense to see that natural evolution where it gets better and better as it goes and gets more experience and makes it as efficient as possible. But this is just the fucking movie suit. Do something different. So Iron Man blasts some rock music through the Stark International speakers and blasts War Machine through the building. Blade drops from the ceiling and captures Danvers as Fury incapacitates the S.H.I.E.L.D. soldiers. Hawkeye speeds up in the Hawkmobile as Blade leaps out of the window with an unconscious Carol Danvers, lands on the roof, and Fury escapes the building. And a bit later, he's racing on foot down the nearby Queensboro Bridge. Punisher asks what the hell is going on as he takes position in the city and watches Giant Man making his way down 3rd Avenue towards Stark International, and he reports no sign of Cap or Thor yet, as Fury orders them to totally ignore Dr. Lang and move to his position at the bridge. Then he's slammed in the back by Cap's shield. Captain America retrieves his shield and tells Fury that he knew he wasn't a Boy Scout, but he never pegged him as a traitor. Fury tries to speak, but he gets bashed over the face. Elsewhere, Hawkeye and Blade escape through the streets until Giant Man slams a bus in their way and grabs the Hawkmobile as Blade escapes on foot. New Black Widow gives chase and clocks Blade in the fangs as Fury gets shield bashed by Cap, and Iron Man gets his iron ass kicked by War Machine. Fury lands and hoists himself against the car and pleads with Captain America that Danvers is setting him up. Cap calls him a liar, and that he's seen the evidence. Meanwhile, Punisher climbs the Queensboro Bridge and radios in that all points need to get to him now, because Fury's getting fucked up, and if he's taken in, they'll put a bullet in his head. Hawkeye tells him that he's very occupied at the moment, and War Machine is still dealing with Stark, but he just tapped into a call that Thor is on his way. And if Punisher is going to act, he needs to do it quick. And lightning cracks as Thor soars through the city. Punisher asks what the fuck he's supposed to do as he watches Cap prepare to take in Fury, and then apologizes to Captain America and aims for his kneecap and pulls the trigger right as Spider-Man is swinging past and tackles Cap out of the way and takes the bullet clean through the abdomen. That's right, this event happens concurrently with the final issues of Ultimate Spider-Man. That's why the Ultimates weren't around or available to deal with the Ultimate Green Goblin or the Ultimate Sinister Six escaping. Cap and Fury both realize what just happened as Spidey lies on his back on the Queensboro Bridge. Cap tells the young man to just take it easy. It was a clean shot through his body and he'll be fine after some medical work. He prepares his first aid kit and calls in a medical crew as Punisher arrives and shouts that he wasn't aiming for the kid. Then Fury is shot through the shoulder and S.H.I.E.L.D. arrive at the scene. Punisher shouts to just kill him for what he's done, and Fury screams for Frank to shut the hell up as they're both detained. Cap goes to work to help Spider-Man and reminds him that this was the reason he never wanted him to get involved with superheroics. Spidey tells Cap that he's really not in the mood right now for this and asks why they're wasting time with him instead of the people who need help. Captain America tells Spidey that S.H.I.E.L.D. has everything under control and orders him to keep his hand pressed down on the wound until they get him to the hospital. Peter calls himself a stupid idiot for screwing up so much today. You took a bullet without even hesitating, son. When you grow up, you're going to be the best of us all. Spidey's able to hold on and clambers up to the road, lamenting this utter fucking nightmare, webs himself up, and then sees something in the sky, and he heads off. Then Thor rockets into the water and destroys War Machine's suit entirely. Elsewhere, Blade fights off New Black Widow and is chased down by Giant Man on 16th and 3rd. Christ, they got far! Then Iron Man soars in and tells Scott to just relax. And he drives Blade into the ground and immediately feels terrible because he thought Blade had like super durability or something and radios in for medics. Meanwhile, a very woozy Carol Danvers radios in for support for New Black Widow after Blade decked her and escaped, and she stumbles down the road, blood filling one of her eyes, and is hit by a fucking NYPD cruiser. Scott panics that this is a fucking disaster, and it is not going how he thought it would when he was joining the Ultimates. And then we cut to about 2 hours later. At the White House, Gregory Stark speaks with President Bush regarding this entire mess of a situation. He informs the president that they had to physically restrain Captain America because he wouldn't stop trying to cave Fury's skull in after S.H.I.E.L.D. retrieved them from the East River, and Bush asks how this all could have happened, and Gregory tells him it was all about power. Fury has been sending Russia and China super soldiers for almost a decade, and in return they offered him the White House. According to the intelligence they have, they were planning to install Fury as the commander-in-chief after the failed invasion by the Liberators. And Stark informs him that they're looking into the possibility of endemic corruption within S.H.I.E.L.D. itself. He then reveals that Danvers is still unconscious and possibly sustained brain damage from the accident, but she has been sent to a secret S.H.I.E.L.D. hospital upstate, and they are currently looking into her own corruption as they speak. President Bush thanks Gregory Stark for stepping forward and taking charge of S.H.I.E.L.D. in these trying times. And they shake hands, and Gregory tells the president it is an honor, and that he looks forward to making S.H.I.E.L.D. as efficient as possible. Then they head out onto the lawn as Stark explains that he plans on using a helicarrier as the temporary base until the Triskelion situation is resolved. Then he heads into his helicopter and flies up. Meanwhile, at Tony's penthouse, Tony vomits in the toilet, and Steve helps him to his feet, asking if he can get him some water. Tony straightens himself up, and they all head back out to find New Black Widow and Thor watching the news reports. Tony asking if Thor remembers the arrangement they made, and it's the funniest fucking thing. Because it is Mark Miller shitting all over Jeff Loeb's stupid adoption of Thor's pseudo-Shakespearean dialogue and retcons that Tony gave Thor $10 million to stop. And I just fucking love that. Aside from a lot of other issues that Loeb added to the Ultimate Universe, I think what he did to Thor was particularly egregious and just made no sense, and I'm glad to see that Mark Miller clearly thought the same. Anyway, Tony gets a drink and the news reports the Iranian situation, and he sits down and asks Monica Monica asks how he feels about the whole Dr. Stark, director of S.H.I.E.L.D. thing. Tony laughs that he himself is a walking security risk, aside from the obvious health problems. He's just too much of a lover to be a fighter for S.H.I.E.L.D. They wouldn't have even had him on the Ultimates if he didn't bring in a substantial cash flow. Thor asks what happened to Hawkeye in the Avengers, and Steve tells him that Gregory won't let him know. But then Steve brings up the Spider-Man situation. Or lack thereof, because S.H.I.E.L.D. just kind of stopped bothering to track him last night, and they don't know what happened. Then Monica says that she's still not too convinced about all this. She doesn't particularly care, because a paycheck is a paycheck, but she just feels like something's off. Even though she does hate her ex-husband Fury, she still can't see him doing something like this. And aboard S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier USS Jimmy Carter, as it returns to New York City and anchors, Director Stark meets Fury on the deck. Fury asks if Stark knows who came up with the designs for the helicarriers, and revealed that it wasn't Tony. It was actually Hank Pym. It was just that Stark International built the first fleet. Fury looks out over the city, reminiscing of those crazy days, those early days that felt like eons ago, when anything was possible and the world was far, far simpler. Stark tells Fury that he was the right man for the right time, but times have changed. Significantly and quickly. And Fury asks if it was Gregory who set him up, and Stark tells him of course it was. He's the wizard behind the curtain that makes the magic happen. Once he got access to S.H.I.E.L.D.'s entire network, it wasn't that hard to get Fury and Danvers at each other's throats to set up this whole situation like a supervillain in a comic book. And Fury asks why the hell he wants S.H.I.E.L.D. when he's one of the richest people in the world. And Stark tells him that he and his brother are playing a grander game. If Tony designs a car, Gregory designs a rocket. Tony becomes a millionaire, Gregory becomes a billionaire. Tony buys his way into the superhero community. Gregory becomes the man who tells the superheroes what to do. Fury asks why he's been arming America's enemies, and Gregory calls him a fool for not realizing that he's been smuggling super forces to arm rebels to help pro-democracy forces in other countries. He's plotting a worldwide revolution. And the first place he's helping is North Korea. Then he plans on installing a triskelion in every major capital of the world. Fury tells him that he likes the way Gregory thinks. Gregory tells him he appreciates the feeling, noting that removing Fury isn't personal, especially since they've had such a long working relationship. But before Fury can continue, he is gunned down. Flashback time. About a week prior, back in Argentina, right after Tyrone Cash revealed what he knew to Fury and the Avengers, War Machine asks what they're supposed to do with this information about Danvers, and Fury tells him they'll just have to do something clever that saves the day and busts this whole conspiracy wide open. And he has just figured out what that is. And a few hours later, the Avengers assault the Argentinian mansion of Tyrone Cash. Frank murders the guards, and Hawkeye and War Machine remove the models and other civilians as Fury pushes the good doctor forward. In his lab, Cash explains that taking a pill makes you indestructible for 24 hours. And unlike Banner's shitty version, you actually retain intelligence while having the strength of 1,000 men. Completely controlled by the user, again, unlike Banner's shitty version. Fury then cocks his gun and asks how long Cash has left. Cash tells him that his pill fully ran out about 20 minutes ago, and now he is just an old, feeble man. Fury aims his handgun and asks if Cash realizes that he deserves this. Cash's last word is obviously, and Fury pulls the trigger. And back in the present, Fury's corpse is hauled across the helicarrier as Director Stark orders the activations of the superhumans sent to North Korea for the primary assault. Then one of the S.H.I.E.L.D. troops notes that something weird is happening and that Fury's body's freaking out and begins growing to hulking size, and the two guards then hulk out to reveal it's Castle and War Machine. Then Hawkeye appears with Blade from the shadows. Stark shouts that they're all just a bunch of jocks pumped up on super drugs as his hands begin to glow and he blasts energy launching them away, and shouts that he is a genius who has constructed a nanite force field in his entire body and has superpowers that are unlike anything that's ever been created, and he'll do anything to ensure his mission is a success. Stark deals a blow to Fury and causes the helicarrier to lurch, and everyone falls off the deck. As in Pyongyang, Korean giant men erupt from beneath the city and march upon Kim Il-sung Square, led by the Spider and hundreds of superhumans. In Iran, Captain Britain reports back to the makeshift SHIELD HQ in Stark International that protests are breaking out in Tehran, and that he tells him there's no way that the engineers sent can possibly find a way to remove the Triskelion before their deadline. Then Thor notices a relayed SHIELD satellite image of North Korea. Cap radios into the helicarrier HQ and asks what the hell is happening, but they don't tell him anything other than it's simply a flare-up between pro-democracy and the authorities. And Tony asks Pepper to get his brother on the phone. And in the skies above New York, Gregory holds down Fury as Tony calls. Tony asks if he knows what's going on and why the Ultimates aren't being mobilized. Gregory tells him it's not an external attack and that they really can't do anything to get involved due to international laws. Gregory then assures his little brother that he's speaking with the UN right now and that Tony and the others should just wait, if Gregory signals them. The Spider leads the charge as the city of Pyongyang burns to the ground and the North Korean army surrenders, and he unmasks himself to reveal that he's Korean himself. Then a massive storm forms over the city and lightning strikes the square as the new Ultimates appear. Spider asks if they know how many fucking laws they're breaking doing this, and Cap reminds him that he's just a little genetic creation made by Gregory Stark. Spider panics as Cap marches to him and asks how the hell he found out, and the Hulk Quartet steps out of the smoke. And the Ultimates wage battle through Pyongyang, and Cap orders his team to not hold back, that they need to shut down Stark's operation right now before word gets out that he was behind it. The helicarrier control reports back to Dr. Stark that the Ultimates have engaged with their Korean agents and that they also found out that SHIELD was behind this plot. Stark shouts in anger and orders them to make sure nothing gets out regarding North Korea as he teleports himself away. A massive battle is waged in Pyongyang, and Gregory Stark teleports himself into the center of it with his nanites. He asks why these idiots can't see the bigger picture in what he's trying to do, and Thor launches Mjolnir at him, but Gregory catches it. He says that he hoped for a little more from Thor and strikes him with his own hammer. Then he rapidly spins around and strikes into Cap's shield, destroying it. Then Tony rockets in and slams his brother in the face. The Stark brothers have a fist fight, but Gregory gets the upper hand and prepares to blast Tony when Tony returns fire with his repulsors and his suit is destroyed. Gregory mockingly tells his little brother that he has 10 years on anything Tony is working with. Tony laughs that Greggy can be 50 years ahead of him, but technology is still technology. Then Tony emits an electromagnetic pulse, and the whole city goes dark. And Tony shouts that they have 15 seconds, and Thor casts lightning down directly into the heart of Dr. Gregory Stark. And Tony freaks out as he watches the burning husk of his brother fall to the ground, lamenting that he just wanted them to knock him unconscious or detain him. Later, in the White House Situation Room, the president is informed that while SHIELD's focus was on North Korea, superhuman rebels in Iran have led a pro-democracy uprising and executed the regime's leadership. And in North Korea, the Ultimates are informed and realize that this was actually the plan all along. Stark was using Korea as a distraction while he got a foothold in the Middle East. And later, as fireworks explode over Tehran, Captain Britain and the EU soldiers watch from the abandoned Triskelion. Several days later, General Nick Fury meets with Colonel Carol Danvers in a high-rise restaurant. Fury makes small talk, but Danvers asks to get to the fucking point. Fury tells her that the president had the greatest respect for her as director of S.H.I.E.L.D., given the situation and her overall incompetence regarding Gregory Stark. She asks what the hell he's talking about, and says that superhumans fight all the time in the street, and there isn't a week that goes by without a hole being punched through the Empire State Building or a bank robbery involving a supervillain.
While you were in the hospital, while the Ultimates were in Korea, Spider-Man was murdered and pronounced dead the following morning. Spider-Man is dead because you let things get out of your control. I don't think it's unreasonable for the president to expect your immediate resignation as S.H.I.E.L.D. director. Not in the same week that we lose half the financial district, the same week that your negligence almost starts World War III over North Korea, of all places. We already have the official documentation, Carol. All you gotta do is sign.
And time passes. Monica Chang, the new Black Widow, writes an email to Fury congratulating him on getting his old job back, and thanks him for the recommendation he gave her to be his second in command, and also heading the Avengers division. Hawkeye and War Machine continue their work in the Black Ops divisions. Punisher is granted his offer, and the funeral for Spider-Man is held. Several months later, as the new Triskelion is still under construction within New York's Bay, Fury lands at the site as he discusses the situation with the old Triskelion in Iran with a Russian general that Fury knows. Fury tells him that with a new government in the Middle East, he's planning on donating it as a gesture of goodwill. And notes that, hey, who knows where another pro-democracy movement might suddenly pop up. Fury smiles and thanks the man for the prosperous call, and hangs up and walks past the engineers and the construction, breathing in the fresh swaths of cool ocean air that blow against him, and says that it's really nice to finally be home. The end. Let me know what you thought of this book in the comments below. Again, I don't know if I'm giving myself ultimate Stockholm syndrome or if it's because I'm analyzing and really looking into these stories over and over again while making the videos, but I fucking love this story arc. Event? Thing? Whatever this is. I thought it was great. It's in line with the Ultimate Universe. It's discarding the overtly edginess of the early installments. And it's at a point where, following the climactic events of Ultimatum, the world is totally changing. The storytelling in the Ultimate Universe is changing. And it's for the better that the storytelling is changing. These post-Ultimatum stories, like, it's disappointing that people sort of just fell off of that afterward completely, because they're so good in the following years and the lead up to Secret Wars at the end. I think this next era of Ultimate Universe, it's obviously better. I don't even need to say I think that. I know that. There are more stories, there's a more diverse writing crew, better art, not as edgy and annoying. And it really felt like Miller is taking effort into these stories and putting time in and actually telling something that isn't just for shock value and more in line with the evolution of the Ultimate Universe from where it started to where it would be now when he's coming back at this point. And as well with the characters and everything else. And I really love Gregory Stark as a character. I think it's just a cool idea for a villain. I like his look. He's like a bizarro Tony Stark. And I love Ultimate Nick Fury and his horrid existence as an amoral character. I wish we had gotten more of this kind of stuff in the MCU. This version of of Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. This is also a pretty unique superheroes versus superheroes story to tell, because it's the Ultimate Universe. They can't work entirely off of, classic comic book convention, and it just has so many working parts and characters that you need to know, but I think it just works very well to set up a whole new era of Ultimate Marvel. Fury's back. The Ultimates are kind of back in a different way. There's the Avengers now that they can play with. The death of Spider-Man, which I'll get to in the future, that's setting up a lot. Like, it's totally reinvigorating what this universe is like. It changes so much in these next couple years of stories. And like I said, I think it's for the better. But let me know your thoughts. Let me know your thoughts on my thoughts in the comments. And as always, check out my Patreon, patreon.com/Smokey's videos, my Etsy shop, blaketwild.etsy.com, links in the description, as well as both of my podcasts. The Comic Shtick Podcast, where comics are my shtick, and I Need Some Disney, a podcast where my Disney-obsessed wife and I discuss all things Disney. And I will see you guys next time. Bye!